another where thousands strip naked and ride bikes through cities, and one that started as a fake sitcom joke, then escaped. These aren't urban legends, they're on actual calendars around the world. Today, we're diving into 39 of the strangest holidays ever. We'll uncover why they began and how they somehow still survive. From tomato warfare in Spain to demon parades in the Alps. From math nerds hijacking March to students inventing billion-dollar sales. By the end, you'll never look at your calendar the same. Festivus, for the rest of us, started as satire. For millions, Festivus turned awkward family dinners into absurd performance rituals. The holiday was dreamed up by a stressed American dad. His son later worked on a hit sitcom writer's room. He brought the bizarre family tradition into an episode storyline. Viewers watched aluminum poles, grievance airings, and intentionally joyless celebrations. Instead of disappearing, the fake holiday jumped into real life. People started holding Festivus dinners from New York to Melbourne. Charities joined the joke, running fundraisers tied to Festivus parties. A throwaway plot joke quietly became a global secular tradition. Talk Like a Pirate Day began as a joke. One random afternoon, two amateur athletes started yelling in pirate voices. They were playing a rough game in Oregon, trading ridiculous nautical insults. At the end, they joked about giving the chaos a date. They picked a friend's birthday and casually crowned it Pirate Day. For years, it stayed a private running gag among their circle. Then, a syndicated newspaper columnist heard the story and amplified it. Readers across the United States embraced the idea almost overnight. Schools, offices, and game communities adopted pirate slang every September. A throwaway sports joke turned into a yearly, worldwide pirate impression contest. Groundhog Day predicts winter with one confused rodent. Every February, crowds in Punxsutawney wake up early for one animal. They watch handlers pull a sleepy groundhog from a decorated burrow. According to tradition, its shadow decides winter's remaining length. If it sees the shadow, they warn of more cold. No shadow supposedly means an early spring for North America. The ritual grew from older European weather beliefs using badgers. Immigrants in Pennsylvania swapped the badger for local groundhogs instead. Despite modern meteorology, people still cheer or groan at the prediction. The chunky rodent remains a celebrity weather forecaster with dubious accuracy. La Tomatina turns a Spanish town into tomato sludge. Once a year, the quiet town of Buñol becomes a battlefield. Trucks roll in loaded with overripe, inedible tomatoes from nearby farms. When the signal sounds, thousands of people start hurling tomatoes everywhere. Walls, streets, and tourists vanish under layers of red pulp. The tradition supposedly began after a chaotic food fight in mid-century. Locals had so much fun they repeated it every summer. Authorities tried banning it, but residents protested with mock funeral processions. Eventually, officials gave in and organized it with strict safety rules. Today, La Tomatina is famous for spectacular photos and sticky shoes. Running of the Bulls began as a meat delivery shortcut. Tourists see adrenaline and danger, but the roots were surprisingly practical. In northern Spain, ranchers needed to move fighting bulls into city arenas. They drove the animals through narrow streets toward the bull ring. Young men started jogging alongside to show courage and agility. Over time, the risky escort turned into a yearly ritual race. In Pamplona, religious celebrations merged with these bull runs in summer. Travel writers and novelists later romanticized the chaos for international readers. Today, runners wear white outfits with red scarves to join tradition. What began as livestock logistics became a notorious test of nerves. Cooper's Hill cheese rolling race chases runaway dairy downhill. On a steep hill near Gloucester, one wheel of cheese causes mayhem. Organizers hurl a large round of double Gloucester down the slope. A split second later, runners charge after it at full speed. The hill is so steep that people instantly tumble and roll. Spectators watch as competitors flip, slide, and crash into protective fences. The winner is whoever reaches the bottom first, not the cheese. The tradition likely started as a local fertility or grazing ritual. Authorities have tried canceling or softening it for safety reasons. Locals keep reviving it, insisting the chaos is part heritage. Day of the Dead welcomes ancestors with sugar skulls. Across Mexico, families transform cemeteries and homes into bright, fragrant shrines. They build ofrendas, layered altars filled with marigolds, candles, and photographs. Sugar skulls decorated with names represent returning loved ones in playful form. Favorite foods, coffee, and sometimes tequila are carefully placed beside portraits. The celebration mixes ancient indigenous beliefs with later Catholic observances. Instead of fearing death, families treat it as a respected neighbor. Children grow up visiting graves, hearing stories, and laughing about old relatives. Nighttime processions carry music through towns, guiding spirits to the offerings. The holiday exists to keep family bonds alive beyond the grave. Krampus Night lets a horned monster punish naughty children. While many countries honor generous saints, alpine villages added something darker. On early December evenings, costumed men transform into horned, shaggy Krampus figures. They stomp through snowy streets with rattling chains and cowbells clanging loudly. According to folklore, Krampus follows St. Nicholas during his yearly visits. Well-behaved children get sweets and oranges from the kindly bishop. Mischievous kids supposedly receive switches, threats, or a sack from Krampus. Modern Krampus parades feature elaborate wooden masks carved by local artisans. Tourists now crowd Austrian and Bavarian towns to witness the chaos. What began as a frightening folk warning became a costumed nightlife spectacle. In Kawasaki, Japan, a spring festival openly celebrates something many cultures hide. Shrines display oversized phallic statues carved from wood, metal, and candy. According to stories, a metal object once defeated the biting spirit. Blacksmiths later adopted the tale as a protector for their trade. Over time, the event expanded into a general fertility celebration. Today, it also raises money and awareness for reproductive health causes. Visitors leave grinning, clutching novelty souvenirs shaped like the shrine's symbol. Thailand's Monkey Buffet Festival exists to thank temple macaques. In Lostory, Thailand, locals set out a feast for uninvited guests. Tables near an ancient temple overflow with fruit, vegetables, and sticky rice. Hundreds of long-tailed macaques swarm the buffet as soon as drummers start. The animals climb towers of pineapples and hurl watermelon rinds everywhere. The celebration began partly to honor local beliefs about protective monkey spirits. Later, clever organizers turned it into a tourist attraction for Lostory. Residents tolerate the chaos because visitors bring money to the town. Decorated ice sculptures and carved fruit add theater to the feeding. The festival thanks the monkeys while leaning heavily into their mischief. Night of the Radishes turns vegetables into Gothic sculptures. Every December in Oaxaca, Mexico, farmers line a square with carved radishes. They grow special oversized radishes just for this nighttime competition. Artists slice and stack the vegetables into elaborate miniature scenes. Religious stories, city landmarks, and spooky creatures all appear in red. Families snake through the plaza, voting with their cameras and attention. The tradition began when vendors carved radishes to attract Christmas market customers. Their improvised decorations impressed local officials walking past the stalls. City leaders eventually formalized it into an official carving contest. Today, humble root vegetables briefly become Baroque sculptures under bright lights. Burning Man builds a temporary city to torch an effigy. In Nevada's desert, a full pop-up city rises from nothing. Tens of thousands arrive with art cars, tents, and towering sculptures. At the center stands a huge wooden figure known simply as the Man. Participants spend days sharing performances, workshops, and strange nighttime processions. Money is mostly replaced by gifting, sharing coffee, snacks, and crafts. Near the end, the community gathers to watch the figure burn. Flames consume months of work, while fireworks and drums surround the pyre. The event started as a small beach burn among friends. It evolved into a massive experiment in community, art, and impermanence. Singles' Day in China became the world's biggest sale. At Chinese universities, November 11th symbolized 4 single ones standing alone. Friends celebrated by buying themselves gifts and going out for dinner. Online retailers saw an opportunity in the growing informal holiday. They launched giant discount campaigns specifically tailored to Singles' Day shoppers. Flash sales, live-streamed product pitches, and digital red envelopes flooded screens. Huge companies began measuring revenue records against that single 24 hours. Shoppers started waiting weeks to purchase big items during the event. A joke about being single turned into a global shopping juggernaut. Boxing Day rewarded servants with leftover gifts and charity boxes. The day after Christmas once looked very different for British households. Wealthy families spent Christmas Day feasting while servants worked non-stop indoors. On the next day, employers finally gave their staff time off. Servants received boxes filled with leftovers, coins, and small household gifts. Churches also opened alms boxes to distribute donations to poor parishioners. Sailors sometimes received boxes symbolizing protection during long sea voyages. Over centuries, the practice morphed into broader charity and shopping traditions. Modern Boxing Day now includes major sports, sales, and family gatherings. Hidden underneath, though, sits its history of service and obligation. Guy Fawkes Night celebrates a failed bomb plot with fireworks. Every November, British skies light up to remember a near disaster. In the early 17th century, conspirators hid gunpowder beneath Parliament. Their plan was to blow up the king and lawmakers together. Authorities discovered Guy Fawkes guarding the explosives in underground cellars. After the plot failed, people lit bonfires to celebrate the king's survival. Effigies of Fawkes were burned as a warning against treason. Over time, bonfires gained fireworks, sparklers, and neighborhood celebrations across Britain. Children once carried stuffed figures through streets asking for pennies. Today, the night mixes history, noise, and roasted snacks around fires. Saturnalia. Let Romans swap roles and roast their masters. In ancient Rome, December meant loud Saturnalia parties instead of quiet reflection. Work paused, courts closed, and everyday business largely stopped for days. Masters served meals to enslaved people, or at least pretended to. Lower status Romans could openly tease or mock their social superiors. Gambling, feasting, and public drunkenness became temporarily acceptable and even expected. Small wax or pottery gifts were exchanged in crowded Roman streets. People shouted festive greetings as candles flickered in decorated homes. Some historians see echoes of Saturnalia in later European winter holidays. For Romans, it was a rare, sanctioned break from strict hierarchy. Once a year in ancient Rome, priests ran nearly naked through streets. They carried strips of goat hide soaked during a sacrifice to Faunus. Women lined the route, hoping to be lightly struck by leather. They believed the whipping improved fertility and eased childbirth difficulties. The ritual honored a mythical wolf cave linked to Romulus and Remus. Feasting and matchmaking games accompanied the strange public procession afterward. Centuries later, church leaders tried replacing Lupercalia with more modest celebrations. Some writers even romantically connected to Valentine customs much later. However, the original festival was far messier than modern greeting cards. The medieval Feast of Fools let priests mock their superiors. In some European cathedrals, year's end turned solemn services upside down. Junior clergy dressed as bishops, complete with crooked hats and staffs. They processed through town singing comic songs and parodying church ceremonies. Inside churches, mock sermons and playful blessings sometimes bordered on offensive. Congregations laughed as sacred chants became nonsense syllables or barnyard sounds. The festival gave lower-ranking clergy a release from strict discipline. Church authorities alternated between tolerating and condemning the wild behavior. Councils eventually issued decrees trying to restrict or ban the practice. Despite pressure, the memory of its irreverent humor lingered for centuries. Boy Bishop Day. Briefly put, a child in charge of church. In medieval Europe, some cathedrals chose a choir boy to play bishop. He was elected around St. Nicholas Day with impressive local ceremony. The boy wore miniature robes, a mitre, and carried a staff. For a short time, he led processions and gave symbolic blessings. Adults treated him with exaggerated respect during his temporary elevation. The role highlighted St. Nicholas as a protector of children everywhere. Later, officials worried the custom undermined church dignity and authority. Several rulers and bishops tried banning or limiting the child bishop. Still, surviving records show communities adored this brief reversal of roles. Holi began as a Hindu legend about burning a demoness. Today, Holi looks like pure color fights, but its stories run deeper. One legend describes a cruel king whose son refused to worship him. The boy stayed loyal to the god Vishnu despite harsh threats. The flames miraculously spared the boy and consumed the treacherous ant instead. People celebrated the victory of devotion over arrogance and cruelty. Bonfires commemorated the burning of evil on the eve of Holi. The following day, crowds threw colored powders and splashed dyed water. The holiday became both a mythic retelling and a giant neighborhood prank. Songkran New Year washes away bad luck with water fights. In Thailand, New Year once meant gentle water pouring over family elders. People visited temples, cleaned Buddha statues, and sought blessings for coming months. Elders received fragrant water lightly poured on their hands in respect. Gradually, younger generations turned the custom into full-scale soaking. Buckets, hoses, and water guns transformed entire streets into running battles. Major cities close intersections so residents and tourists can join safely. Pickup trucks crawl past, carrying barrels of water and shouting participants. Despite the chaos, many still begin Songkran with temple visits. The festival balances spiritual cleansing with very literal outdoor rinsing. While Purgus Night gathered witches on hillsides to scare away winter. In parts of Central and Northern Europe, spring arrives with bonfires and folklore. Villagers historically believed witches gathered on mountaintops before May arrived. To drive away evil, communities lit roaring fires on hillsides. People rang bells, banged pots, and wore garlands to ward off spirits. Effigies representing winter or wicked forces were sometimes burned in flames. The night also honored Saint Walpurga, associated with protection and healing. Over centuries, the evening blended superstition, Christianity, and seasonal celebration. Modern Walpurgis festivals feature costumes, music, and plenty of outdoor drinking. The once fearsome witch night now feels more like fiery spring carnival. Setsubun has families throw beans to banish hungry demons. In Japan, the end of winter brings a noisy household purification ritual. Parents or older siblings dress as horned oni demons with colorful masks. They burst into rooms growling while children clutch bowls of roasted soybeans. Shouting, "Go away, demons," families pelt the intruder with handfuls of beans. The beans symbolically drive misfortune and illness out of the home. Afterward, everyone eats a lucky number of beans for good health. Some regions also celebrate by eating special uncut sushi rolls in silence. Temples invite celebrities to scatter beans over cheering crowds outside gates. The simple act of throwing food becomes a yearly reset button. El Colacho has devils jump over babies for protection. In a Spanish village, infants lie in neat rows on mattresses. Men dressed as bright yellow and red devils sprint down the street. The ritual combines Catholic processions with older local protective customs. Villagers believe the leap helps cleanse the children of bad influences. Costumed figures also carry whips and props to scare onlookers playfully. The event looks terrifying in photos, but is tightly organized. Residents emphasize there have been no recorded injuries from the jumps. The surreal scene survives as a strange blend of faith and folklore. Obon lantern floating guides lost ancestor spirits safely back home. During Obon season in Japan, evenings glow with flickering lantern lights. Families return to hometowns to clean graves and offer favorite foods. They believe ancestors' spirits come back to visit during these days. Traditional dances called Bon Odori fill town squares with circles of movement. On the final night, lanterns are set afloat on rivers. Some communities send small boats carrying candles out onto dark water. The drifting lights symbolically guide spirits away toward the other world. Even in big cities, neighborhood events recreate the gentle farewell ritual. The holiday turns grief into a yearly reunion instead of permanent separation. National Nothing Day was invented to protest made-up holidays. As quirky observances multiplied, one American writer got increasingly annoyed. He watched calendars fill with days for pickles, waffles, and random causes. In response, he proposed a day devoted to absolutely nothing official. No speeches, no parades, and no designated theme were allowed. He picked a date in January and sent announcements to newspapers. Editors treated the idea partly as satire and partly as commentary. Ironically, National Nothing Day itself became another listing on novelty calendars. Some people half-heartedly mention it online while working anyway. The protest against silly holidays quietly joined the crowd it mocked. Opposite Day exists mostly so kids can annoy exhausted adults. Unlike ancient festivals, Opposite Day has blurry origins and flexible rules. Children usually declare it suddenly, catching parents off guard at breakfast. Yes means no, no means yes, and instructions become impossible puzzles. Teachers sometimes embrace it in classrooms for playful language exercises. The idea appears in cartoons, jokes, and children's books over decades. It thrives because it temporarily flips power in everyday conversations. Kids relish granting themselves loopholes for chores and bedtime obligations. Adults participate reluctantly, laughing while trying to keep basic safety clear. The holiday survives mostly as a recurring excuse for semantic chaos. Pi Day started when nerds realized 3.14 looked suspicious. Mathematicians and teachers always loved the number circling every geometry lesson. Someone noticed the coincidence between March 14th and the digits of pi. Classrooms began using the date to share puzzles and pie slices. Universities hosted lectures, contests, and jokes about infinite decimals that day. Science museums and student clubs quickly adopted the pun-filled celebration. Bakeries joined by selling special pies decorated with the familiar symbol. Some enthusiasts even time parties for the exact minute matching more digits. The holiday helps make a notoriously abstract concept feel approachable. What began as inside humor became a global math-themed excuse. Star Wars Day exists because May the 4th puns. Early on, small fan groups used the date for themed meetups. World Naked Bike Ride protests car culture with bare skin. In cities worldwide, groups of cyclists suddenly appear wearing almost nothing. They ride together to highlight how vulnerable cyclists feel in traffic. Organizers argue that bare skin symbolizes exposure on crowded city streets. The event also protests oil dependency and pollution from private vehicles. Participants decorate bodies with slogans, glitter, and sometimes creative partial costumes. Routes pass landmarks so media and onlookers cannot easily ignore them. Police and organizers negotiate boundaries, safety marshals, and acceptable coverage levels. Despite shock value, the rides often feel surprisingly cheerful and supportive. The unusual dress code ensures their message gets noticed every summer. International Pillow Fight Day turns city squares into feathery battlefields. On a chosen day, people gather in major cities carrying pillows. At a signal, they launch into chaotic but mostly gentle battles. Feathers and stuffing fly through the air like cartoon snowstorms. Urban plazas, parks, and landmarks briefly transform into playful combat zones. The event grew from online flash mob culture in the 2000s. Organizers publish meeting points and simple rules to avoid real injuries. Participants are encouraged to swing softly and avoid unarmed pedestrians nearby. Photographers capture clouds of feathers around skyscrapers and statues. For one afternoon, commuters see strangers laughing instead of hurrying past. Take Your Dog to Work Day boosts morale and adoption. Office workers once hid pet photos on desks. Later, they brought pets. Animal advocates proposed a dedicated day to spotlight adoptable shelter dogs. Companies willing to participate opened their doors to employees' canine companions. Conference rooms filled with wagging tails, chew toys, and portable beds. The idea was that coworkers might consider adopting after meeting rescues. Some offices reported lower stress and easier conversations during the event. Policies emerged requiring leashes, proof of vaccinations, and cleanup supplies. Not every workplace can safely host dogs among cables and equipment. Where it works, the holiday adds fur to corporate culture. Saint Monday. Let workers skip work after heavy Sunday drinking. Before modern labor laws, many artisans followed their own weekly rhythm. Sunday often ended with long hours in taverns and beer gardens. On Monday morning, some simply did not show up at workshops. Employers complained about empty benches and late deliveries to customers. The habit became so common it earned the nickname Saint Monday. Workers viewed it as an informal extension of their only rest day. Moralists and industrialists denounced the pattern as laziness and vice. As factory schedules tightened, skipping Monday grew harder and riskier. The unofficial holiday faded, replaced by regulated weekends and formal vacations. Feast of the Ass honored a donkey in medieval church. In parts of medieval Europe, churches briefly gave starring roles to donkeys. A live animal was led inside during special commemorative services. The feast recalled biblical stories where donkeys carried important figures safely. Congregations sometimes joined in braying responses instead of solemn amens. Processions led the animal through town, decorated with colorful cloth and garlands. The line between reverence and ridicule could get uncomfortably thin. Authorities occasionally criticized the festival for drifting into disrespectful comedy. Over time, stricter church regulations squeezed out the more outrageous elements. The once boisterous donkey celebration survives mainly in scattered historical references. The Roman Bacchanalia mixed secret wine parties with moral panic. In Republican Rome, some religious gatherings promised more than quiet prayer. Followers of Bacchus held nighttime rites involving wine, music, and ecstasy. Sources describe singing, dancing, and possibly wild behavior in forested sanctuaries. The meetings initially included only women before later opening to men. Rumors spread that conspirators plotted crimes under cover of devotion. Roman authorities launched investigations and dramatic crackdowns against suspected participants. Senators passed decrees tightly controlling when and where rites could occur. The scandal left a lasting reputation for dangerous excess around Bacchus. Modern readers remember it as the empire's infamous secret drinking club. Hungry Ghost Festival feeds restless dead to keep them calm. In parts of East and Southeast Asia, one lunar month feels crowded. People believe restless spirits wander among the living during this period. Families set out food offerings on sidewalks and household altars. Incense smoke curls upward as paper money burns in metal containers. Opera performances and puppet shows historically entertained both people and ghosts. Some communities float small lanterns to guide spirits safely along. There is an unspoken rule against swimming during the ghost month. Businesses may hold ceremonies asking for protection and prosperity from unseen guests. The festival balances fear of neglected spirits with acts of generosity. Scotland's Up Helliah burns a Viking ship for fun. In Lerwick, Shetland, winter ends with torches, helmets, and a wooden ship. Residents dress as costumed squads known locally as geysers each year. One leader, the Geyser Jarl, wears detailed Viking-style armor. A replica longship is pulled through town behind marching participants. Spectators line streets as flaming torches turn the night orange. At the finale, torches are thrown onto the waiting ship. The vessel erupts in flames while crowds cheer and bands play. The festival grew from 19th century torch processions and local imagination. Today, it celebrates heritage, community effort, and controlled pyrotechnic spectacle. Japan's Crying Babies Sumo Festival trusts tears to bring luck. At certain shrines in Japan, parents willingly hand infants to strangers. Priests or sumo wrestlers hoist the babies high on wooden stages. Two babies face each other while adults encourage them to cry. According to old beliefs, a loud cry means strong future health. Some regions have officials wear demon masks to coax louder tears. Referees declare the first baby to cry the symbolic winner. Modern parents participate for photos, blessings, and a touch of tradition. Organizers carefully watch for distress and cut rounds short when needed. The odd contest treats tears as an early sign of resilience. The No Pants subway ride became an annual commuter prank. One winter day in New York, actors boarded trains without pants. They kept straight faces, behaving as if nothing were unusual. Passengers stared as more pantless riders entered at different stops. The organizers wanted to test how people react to playful absurdity. Photos and videos of the stunt quickly spread through online communities. Other cities copied the idea, staging synchronized, trouserless subway rides. Participants still wear normal coats, hats, and shoes for contrast. Transit authorities sometimes tolerated, sometimes warn about disruptive behavior. The prank evolved into an unofficial holiday of deadpan public silliness.